The first thing you remember seeing through his new telescope were the rings of Saturn, and he has been hooked ever since. Jeremy studied astrophysics at Penn State University, but later went to get a music degree from the Middle Tennessee State University and a law degree from WVU College of Law. During his last year of law school, his passion for astronomy was rekindled, and Jeremy decided to open Insight Astronomy, located in Bridgeport, West Virginia. In addition to running his store, Jeremy is the director of the observatory observations for the Central Appalachian Astronomy Club, and is an avid astrophotographer. Join me in giving a hand to Jeremy Bummer.
We'll see if this microphone here works. It sounds like it is. So my talk today is on simplified astrophotography, so the actual process of taking your photos, but maybe not so quite so simple with post-processing. But the fact that we're getting out there and actually imaging is the first step. So why simplify things? Keep it simple in the field. Well, if we have all this great equipment that we bought that's super expensive, it's supposed to be the latest and greatest of everything, why wouldn't we use it? Well, show me how many times have you guys looked at the weather and saw it's clear and you're like, how do you not want to go outside and set up? Well, I'm going to deal with all this stuff. Yeah, so I deal with that all the time too. So, I feel like I overcomplicate things a lot of the times, and it's done two things for me. So, I don't go out and image as much because it just seems like a hassle sometimes. I just don't want to do it. And I have perfectionist tendencies, so I expect excellence with all the things that I'm doing, and when I don't, things go wrong, it really sets me back. So I've tried to take a step back from that and try to simplify things, to get out there and imaging it more so. So I try to combat this, just keep things simple, kiss it. So we're talking about no large mount, no guide camera, no computer, just a camera, wide field lens, and a tracker. And that's what I'm shooting with right now. The why wide field? Well, it doesn't really get much more simple than wide field astrophotography. Use wide angle lenses. Some people can say that, getting up 200, 300 millimeters, that's not wide angle anymore, but still, it's a lot less equipment. It's easier to travel with, and your mistakes aren't as compounded as they are with long focal lengths. So if you have bad alignment, bad guiding, bad tracking, bad focus, they're not nearly as compounded as long focal length telescopes or lenses. So we can get by with a few of these mistakes, and instead of being perfectionists, we can be okay with a little bit of mistake and see what we can do with the images. So, it's perfect for traveling to remote locations. I grab this, fold it up, throw it in the back of the car, and go to a dark sky. I don't have to lug all this equipment out to my car. I'm a telescope and my tripod and stuff. So it's easy just to grab and go to a dark sky location and enjoy the night. So what gear do you need? I'm using a modified Canon T3i. Quite old, like 10, 15 years old. If you don't have DSLR or you have a cool astro camera, you can use that as well. But I'm just using an old school T3i that's been astro modified. Your wide angle lens, so I usually shoot anywhere from like a 14 millimeter up to this Rokinon 135 that I shoot with. And that's actually what I took the pictures with that we'll be discussing today. We'll need a sturdy tripod, something that'll hold your camera. Not necessary, but helpful is a tracker, so you can take a little bit longer exposures. If you don't have a tracker like this, the Skylab Watcher Star Adventure GTI is what I'm using, you can just set it up on a tripod and do some still shots, as long as you're not getting too many star trails. That's what the tracker helps do, is take longer exposures. But you can just do it with a tripod and your camera and go from there. And the next thing that we'll use is either a interpolometer or a remote shutter, so that way you can tell your camera how long you want to take exposures, how many exposures. This camera has Magic Lantern firmware built into it, so it's got a built-in interpolometer. I just tell it how long I want it to shoot and how many frames. Click the button and it goes and does its thing. I don't have to sit there all night looking at it, looking at the screen, making sure things are right. I just let it do its thing. So if you're shooting, how do you compose the image that you want to? I use a website called focus, which is really nice. I decided I wanted to shoot the North American nebula, so NGC 7000. I input 135 millimeter for my lens, and then the crop sensor size is 23 by 15. And so it shows me what I'm actually going to frame up in the sky with my camera setup. And it's actually quite large. It's almost a 10-degree field of view on the long side. So it covers a decent amount of sky with 135 millimeter camera. You can get some great shots of nebulas, open starfield clusters, the Milky Way, like the central core, shooting on a setup like this. A couple other softwares that you use to determine what you're going to shoot, Stellarium or PhotoPills as well. We'll do this kind of thing, give you a field of view indicator of what your target will look like with your current setup. Settings for this easy setup. So on the camera, we're going to do aperture as wide as possible. With this lens, it's actually a manual aperture that you can rotate. So there's a ring on here I can adjust from f2 all the way to f32. I actually like to shoot this a little down at f2.8. Stars seem just a little bit sharper on a lens like this instead of wide open. You're going to reduce the amount of light that's coming in, so you're not going to get as much per exposure, but it's going to make your stars a little bit sharper, which is nice. Now on a kit lens, like you come with Canon, they don't have a manual on way to adjust your focal ratio there. So on the back of the camera, you can adjust on that digitally and open and close the aperture blades inside this. So it's not done manually on like a kit lens. Your ISO, typically cameras like Canon have the best range around 800 to 1600 ISO. That's where the actual photons coming in the sensor are converted digitally the most optimally. So you're getting the best noise signal ratio around 800 ISO. You can bump it up higher, 400, 3200 ISO. You'll start getting a lot of grain and noisiness in your images. We can actually fix that post-processing. So if you take an 800 ISO, 1600 ISO, we can actually bump that brightness up in post-processing and not lose any of the information that we otherwise would, bumping up ISO too high in camera. Now your exposure length for stuff like this, it's going to be as long as your mount and tracker will allow you to. For this setup, I actually went with a 5-minute exposure. No guiding or anything like that, just tracked. It did give a little bit of star trailing here and there, but I'll show you in post-processing how we can fix small mistakes like that. As long as we can get this set up out there taking pictures, that's the big thing. We get our equipment out there collecting these photons. Now your setup might be a little bit different. You don't have a tracker, so you have to take much shorter exposures, so you won't get really bad star trails, or your alignment's not as good, your camera's a little shaky, you might have to do something in between. But I usually shoot for like 1 to 5 minute exposures on a setup like this. And what I do for polar alignment, well, it was quick and dirty. I literally pulled up the app that works with the Skywatcher. It has a little indication to show you where Polaris should be on it. I plop this thing down north, look right through here, and got it as close as possible. I called it a day. I really didn't spend much time on it, less than 5 minutes doing my polar alignment. Called it close enough because I just wanted to start taking pictures. I didn't want to mess with it over and over and over, waste precious time that I could be collecting photons. So that's really cool to have that. There's other apps that will show you how to do your polar alignment as well, but I didn't do any drift alignment or anything like that. I just plopped it on the rig, put Polaris there, and called it good enough. So how do we focus at night with stuff like this? Well, you can't really do automatic focusing. The stars aren't bright enough just to click your shutter and hopefully it automatically rotates. So you'll have to manually adjust your focus on these. So what I like doing is finding a bright star that's near whatever I'm shooting. Luckily for the North American nebula, the neb's right there, it's super bright. And we're going to turn on the live view of the camera. So on a Canon, on the back of it, there's a button here that's live view. It literally just gives you a live view of whatever we're sitting in. So we can actually see the screen over there, over there. But you'll use that to find a bright star, center it in your viewfinder in the back, And then we'll slowly iterate our focusing ring to get it down to where the star is as clear as possible within reason. Canon cameras also have a zoom effect on the top right. You can zoom in twice to 10x on some of these and get closer to the stars. So what does that actually look like? Well, out of focus, we've got a star right there in the center. It's not going to be super bright, but you'll be able to see it. And once you adjust your focus ring, it's going to get smaller. But can we get even better? So we focus our focus ring again, and it gets so small it almost disappears. We keep going, and it gets bigger again. So we found our focus point. We can go from large to small, smallest, small again. So we found that happy medium back in between where the star almost disappears. It's so sharp. That's all I do for focusing. I don't use a back off mask. I don't use an automatic focus or anything like that. I just focus manually on the back of the screen, and then sometimes I'll tape it down as well. Point directly up. A lot of our lenses are heavy, and they'll push the focus down and lose focus. So you can tape your focus ring down if necessary. So what kind of exposures are we doing? Canon T3i modified. I've got a Rokinon 135 millimeter. I'm shooting an f2.8, ISO 800, 5-minute exposures. And I only set this up to do 12 exposures, so 1 hour is really all I got to shoot these types of things. To see what we can get. At least we got some photos. So I shot 3 different objects a couple weeks ago, pre-bank. North American Nebula. This is just a raw image straight out of the camera of it. Lagoon Nebula, Trifid Nebula, the Milky Way as well. Just a raw 5-minute exposure. And the Robo-Fucus complex with the Antares in globulus cluster and 4. So 3 hours worth of exposure, 3 different targets, an hour each. I got out there and shot, and then after the 3rd hour, it started fogging up. So I packed it up, a few dark frames, and called it a night. Didn't do anything crazy, but I got out there and shot, and got some photons. So that's the setup of doing this basic, minimalistic, simplistic astrophotography. So what can we do with that once we get these files? We go into the Excel site. That's where I process. This is my typical workflow. We'll go through it, and then I actually have step-by-step how each of these processes works and see what we can get with this 1 hour or less. In this case, is what it's going to try to be photos. So the first thing, we calibrate the raw images. So we use weighted batch pre-processing to calibrate these. We take darks, flats, biases, dark flats. The only thing I took for these was darks. I took 25 minutes worth of darks, and that's the only calibration for I took. Just because I was packing up, I might as well take them while I'm packing everything up. The next thing I do is remove the background gradient. The newest thing in Pixelsight is multi-scale gradient correction. They actually use it's a survey called MARS, M-A-R-S, that has surveyed the entire sky, almost all of it, to get the actual gradients in wide field compared to your image, and it'll remove these gradients. So there's no user input with like background abstraction or dynamic background abstraction. It does it based off of statistics instead of you have to do anything. The next thing, we'll adjust our white balance. SPCC, the spectrophotometric color calibration. As he said, use the Gaia catalog that took the spectra, the intensity of all these millions of stars, and compares it to the actual color of the stars in your image, and automatically corrects that white balance. So you don't have to worry about plugging in anything. Next thing we'll do, actually permanently stretch very early on. We use the histogram function to do that. There's a cool way to adjust what you see live with the screen transfer function. Just drop it down to the histogram and then apply it. You can do that with it. Next, we'll use Russ Croman's Blur Exterminator. A lot of the images that I took, like I said, I just threw it out there. Not great alignment, not great guiding. A lot of my stars are elongated. And this will help correct the spread function of what the stars actually supposed to look like in there, and correct a lot of the, not noise, but the blurriness in the photo. Then we'll create a starless image. We want to work on the nebula separate from the stars. We're really going to push how far we can process the nebula, bringing out all the nebulosity, pushing the background really dark, and then bring the stars back in later. And what we want to do there is using rain function and other things to maximize the nebula brightness. We'll reduce the noise after we've done all this histogram function because it's really going to get noisy. I only took an hour's worth of exposure. This camera's not cool till it's noisy to begin with. So we're really going to put down that noise after we've done this too, to make it look a lot smoother. We want to highlight our details using contrast with sharp maps. We're going to finally recombine the image using pixel maps, so we'll get the stars back in there. Then we're going to use a cool script called star reduction script to reduce the star's size and emphasis so the nebula can really shine through here. And then our final adjustments of saturation with curves, and we get an admire the picture. So let's look like and see what this actually looks like in Pixel. So we've got weighted batch pre-processing that we pull up. On the bottom, you just click what you're going to add. So here I have darks, only 5 darks that I took, 25 minutes total. Put lights plus on the bottom, add those. I ended up with 13 frames here. So it was an hour and 5 minutes worth of exposures. But some of these were not very good. And weighted batch pre-processing actually knocked 4 of them out, only used 9 total here because the focus was bad, the guiding was bad, and couldn't tell the central point of the stars to align them all together. So I only ended up with 45 minutes worth of integration time for this. And that's it. It's weighted batch pre-processing, tells you everything it's going to do, calibrates them, delayers them, creates an actual color image, since we have the color matrix in our DSLRs. It registers them, uses local normalization, integrates them, and then finally gives you your astrometric solution so it knows where all the stars are in the sky. So let's look and see what a raw file looks like. This is, yep.
When you're getting set up on there, you set your white balance on daylight, space.
Yeah, so mine, I just have as neutral, literally zeros across the board for my white balance on my camera. Yep. Even though it's actually modified, it has a very strong red bias now for it. Since that infrared filter's been taken out, I just leave it as straight neutral across the board to get all the data, and then I change that in software. It takes like I don't want the camera doing anything. So it should be straight raw.
No change at the time, so?
No, not at all. No. So this is our raw file that we get in Pixel. As Bill said earlier, like we can't see anything. It's not stretched. So what we do is take screen transfer function, and we just hit the nuclear button, and it brings it up. So this is a single raw image of the North American Nebula. There's a few things that I noticed. It's got quite a green cast to it. So in DSLRs, the filters that are inside of it are red, green, green, blue. So there's twice as many green as there are red and blue. So you get this green bias in your frame, which we'll take care of later, but this is what your raw file looks like. So this is a raw file, and this is our 45-minute integrated file. Looking at the difference, it's pretty flat across here. There's no real gradient that I'm seeing that's awful. I didn't use flat frames. But we move to the integrated one, we start getting a really big gradients in the middle, vignetting around the outside. So was it actually worth it to stack these photos? It kind of looks a little worse to me. Well, let's zoom in and see. So this is a zoom preview. So you can click the preview button there and just draw a preview on your screen and it will show up. This is pretty zoomed in on the central part. We've got a little bit of nebulosity here, but a lot of background that's just very, very noisy. And our stars don't look that great either. So we will integrate our 9 images, and it really cleans things up. We don't have all the noise anymore. We've got 45 minutes worth of exposure, and it really starts to clean up the image. We can see more nebulosity here, and in the center as well. And the background's starting to die down. But we still have some problems with our stars. They're not spherical. They've got some bad trailing. But we'll take care of that later. So the integration process was perfect. So this is what I was talking about earlier, the multi-scale all-sky reference survey, MARS. This is a survey that they use to use the new multi-scale gradient correction. So you can download this and use it within Pixel. There's a funny first step that you have to do first to be able to use it. It's called spectrophotometric flux calibration. So all you do is insert the type of camera you're using. I'm using a Canon 600D for my red, green, and blue filter. So it knows that's what the star should look like for these filters. You just drag it onto your image. And it gives you these curves here, red, green, and blue, to know what the scale is on the flux. Nothing you have to do, you just need to do this prior to using the next step, which is our multi-scale gradient correction. So instead of using TBE, I'm using this. After we've done the flux, just drag this onto it, and you can see our background extraction. We had that brighter center I was talking about, so vignetting on the outside, and it's reducing some of the green color mass. Not all of it, but some of it. This is just automatic. I don't have to add points like I do with dynamic background extraction or anything like that. There's no user error that could be with it. Literally just drag and drop this on there and reduce your gradient from the background. So this is the before. A lot of brighter brightness in the middle, vignetting on the outside, and then that is after. Before and after. I really flattened out the image, made the corners nice and even. Now I didn't take any flat frames at all. We just allowed the multi-scale gradient correction to do it for me. So now we're still looking at it and it's green. So we can unlink the channels. And then we can do our stream stretch function again, to kind of show what the actual image should look like. So there we go. That's slightly color corrected with screen transfer function, but that's just showing up on our screen. We haven't actually manipulated the color at all. The computer itself on our monitor is just showing a different bias for the red, green, blue channels. So this isn't a bad photo. 45 minutes so far. We can see the nebula, a lot of stars, but there's a lot more that we can actually uncover with this image, even though it's only 45 minutes. The next thing I would do is the spectrophotometric color calibration, SPC. So in weighted batch pre-processing, it did the last step was the astrometric solution to tell us where all the stars were. It uses the Gaia catalog from the Gaia Space Telescope, which did spectra and intensity of millions of stars. So it knows exactly what these stars should look like, what color they should be. So this will compare our image to that and hopefully fit us with a plot, a line, to the best fit, actually scale and get these colors where they should be with the correct white color calibration. A cool thing you can do is create a drag one here in the background, just sky. I have created a little background there. Drag it from here down to my region of interest. And that will actually use that space that I've determined as background for my background visualization. And that's what that little preview is. So it's using that to visualize the background in this step as well. So we did it, and our image looks awful now. It's bright red. But that's because we have a screen stretch on it. So it used all these stars individually. You can see these dots are stars in our image, and it compared them and best fit with the stars from the Gaia catalog. The blue and green doesn't look as good, it's a little further stretched out, but it still gets a pretty decent fit to it. So what we do next to actually see this correction is we relink our channels in the screen transfer function, and just hit the nuclear button again. So this is now a corrected white balanced image. So all of our channels should be correct. We want to mess with the red, green, blue individually. This is the actual white balance of this image compared to the Gaia catalog. So that was before we did the white balance. That we just did the screen transfer function and unlinked them. And that's the after with the actual white balance correct. And we still got a lot more to do for a lot of detail in this image. The next thing I like to do is the blur exterminator. So we've got these stars that are elongated, they don't look good. So in this, it's been trained on correct stars, what they should look like. And it's also been trained on aberrations of stars. So we can start trailing chromatic aberration, spherical aberration, all that stuff. So it knows what stars should look like, and it can detect what aberrations have happened to these stars incorrectly. So you drag the thing onto it. I actually did a preview here, so I'll have to wait for the whole thing to process while I'm testing out the variables here. It'll be much quicker. So we drag it onto our preview, before, after. Before, and after. Really reduces the star sizes and increases the clarity of the nebula in the background a little bit. I probably could have spent a little more time with the settings here to make sure the halos weren't as bad, but I'm trying to do this as simply as possible to get a decent image. But it does a great job of correcting those guiding errors that we had because we weren't guiding. We did a bad polar alignment. We can actually fix a lot of that in post-processing, which we do for us coming here. And then we apply it to the entire image. So this is before and after. So before with the elongated stars, after. Really reduce the stars and let the nebula kind of shine through. Did a great job of that. So our next step, well, we actually haven't stretched the image at all yet. So we've just done the screen transfer function. So I will just use the nuclear button, grab the screen transfer function, drag it to the histogram so it applies here, and then we can apply the permanent stretch from the histogram transformation to the image. So we're literally just copying what's here to the histogram and applying it to the image. So when we do that, we get a super bright white image. Why? Because we've doubly stretched it. So we've applied it here and actually applied it to the image, but our screen transfer function is still active as well. So it's applying this stretch twice. So we just need to reset our screen transfer function. Little bottom, right hand corner, reset it. So now we have a permanently stretched white balance image that we can process even further. The next thing, we're going to do a star exterminator. We're going to separate this into two images, just the stars and just the nebula, because we really want to hit the nebula hard and process it. Kind of leave the stars alone until the very end. So we'll just drag this down and create a new starless and star image. So there's our star image after the process, and our starless image of just the nebula in the background. And this is where all the noise is going to be, is in the background of the nebula. The stars, it's just pinpoints. There's really not going to be any noise in the background here because there is no background noise. It's all been put in this image is where the noise is. So we're going to deal with that by itself. So zooming into another preview, we use the noise exterminator now. Just dragging this on down to it. This is very centralized in the nebula. This is before and after. Before noise exterminator and after. It cleans up all that noise in the dark nebulosity and throughout the brighter nebulosity as well. And apply it to the entire image. So now we've got a very clean, stretched nebulosity image that we can do some final tweaks to as well. So I wanted to boost the red channel slightly. The way I did this actually is I grabbed an unlinked screen transfer function, just grabbed the red slider, moved it to the left barely. It's usually at 0.5, I went to 0.477, just to increase the reds a little bit more to show the nebulosity. So again, take the screen transfer function, drag it to our histogram so we can permanently apply it, and pop it onto the image. So before, after. Just barely brightening the reds up so the nebulosity shows through a little bit better. Then I really wanted to crush the histogram on the nebula by itself. I wanted to make anything in the background that was just noise, wasn't actually nebulosity, really crush it. So I grabbed my black slider all the way over there. I actually clipped 230,000 pixels that were black, about 1.3% of the entire image, to really, really crush the background here. And then adjusted my midpoint as well. I did this in the real-time preview of histogram transformation, so the little target button, you click that, and then while you're adjusting it, you can actually see what it looks like, which is kind of nice. And then apply that to the image. So before the histogram stretch, really deep one, and then after. So before and after. Trying to bring out all that nebulosity, really crush the background. That was just easy. And the next thing I did, I wanted a little extra contrast in there, so I grabbed a sharp mask. Did a high standard deviation in the 200s, a very small amount, only like 2.2. Threw that on there. And sharpened up, and brought up the contrast a little bit. Not a lot, just a little bit, to try to darken some of the regions and bring out some more of the nebulosity. nice little step there. And then what I did here, grab the little integration sign, move it over to the side. That's a copy and fix insight. I'm going to use this later for a process, but we're going to continue working on this one. I can start back into it. The cool thing in Fix Insight, in the bottom left-hand corner, History Explorer, if you continue working on the same picture over and over, every single thing you did is in that history. You can go back to every single process you've ever done, click on it, it'll revert you to that, and show you what the process was, what your settings were. So you can be working on the same image the entire time and never worry about losing anything, because you can always go back, which is really nice. So I'll pull out a starless copy to use that later. I'll continue working on the actual glossy by itself. Recombination. So you notice I haven't really get into the stars at all. The only thing I did was work on the nebula to really bring it out. We're going to recombine them with Pixel Map. So using combine integration, which is our nebula photo, integration stars, and then what do we want to do? Screen. That's the operation we're going to do. Close that off. And then when we drag it on, I'm actually going to replace my target image down here so it stays in the History Explorer. And I'll drag this to the nebula photo and get a recombined image with the stars. And there's a recombined image. Or so. So next, I haven't worked on the stars at all. I'm going to use a script called Star Reduction. So it uses a starless version and the full version that's recombined. That's why I grabbed a copy of the starless version. And the target image, that'll be our one that's already recombined with integration. Starless view, we'll add the starless in there. And it defaults to the reduction method stars, strong, and then I actually did 2 integrations. I really pushed this as hard as I could without making it look awful. But the script here, you can actually see in real time the adjustments you're making, how big and how little the stars is, and you can zoom in as well. Again, I'm just going to replace the target image and see how much the stars are. So before star reduction, after star reduction, really lowers the impact of the stars in the background and lets the nebula itself shine through, which is really nice. It reduces the size and brightness of the stars is what it does. And it does it automatically, which is really nice. You just have a few inputs that you can change. I did a curves adjustment just to darken it a little bit, bring out some contrast. Not a big change there. I wanted to increase the saturation, so I did with that with curves as well, with the S tab on saturation. Bring up the red some more. And then we're done. So this is our first image that we saw, 45 minutes integrated. Simple setup, simplified astrophotography. Taking it from that to that. Just 45 minutes of integration in 5 frames. So there's a lot of detail you can get out of there. Just a little bit of integration. You dive into it. As long as you actually get out there and photograph that. There. So was it worth it doing it this way? I think it was. So I connected with the Cosmos when I did this. I was with my nephews, and they wanted image too, so all 3 of us kind of did this. And in the meantime, we grabbed a pair of binoculars, and we're just surfing the sky. Instead of checking on our camera, being behind the screen the entire time, we just let it do its thing. If it got pictures, it got pictures. If not, it didn't. We still enjoyed the night sky. And we got to see a lot of cool stuff and just bond together, which I usually don't do when I do my full setup. I'm so focused on what I'm trying to do. So it was nice to actually reconnect. And it was meditative. I didn't overcomplicate things, and I wasn't worried if it didn't work. Usually I'm so like, oh my gosh, we got to get this to work. It was nice just to set this up and let it go and do its thing. But we still captured a moment that we normally don't see. We got the North American nebula that it's not easy to capture that inside the city, so we went to a dark sky and got it. And we still don't need super expensive gear to create something beautiful like this. Just an easy camera DSLR, guide or a tracker, and a tripod to get an image like that. Thank you very much. Questions?
there are two thought processes. One is do the noise reduction up front, or do you wait until later? So there's the thought process for doing that. Of course, is wide stretch the noise and reduce noise in the process.
Yeah.
Versus,
So my thought process there is that if I reduce the noise in a linear state, I'm probably not going to get rid of all of it. And then I'm going to reintroduce more as I continue stretching. So I'm going to introduce as much noise as I'm going to within remove it. That's my thought process. So I can see at the very end, is all the noise I introduced for stretching and curves and all that, is it gone now? Or did I introduce more? If I do it in an earlier state, I'll take care of all of it. If I did stretch it even further, we would introduce some noise. That's why I do it that way.
I've done both ways.
Yeah.
I just want to question.
Yep, absolutely.
And you mentioned taping the lens. I use gaffer tape,
Yeah.
which doesn't put you, I can cloth stuff at the paper, something gets a little bit damp. It's done crappy, so you get, I get the bigger roll and I can just tear it, just as a tip. And the second thing is on some of my lenses, there's the infinity mark, and I don't know if you mentioned it or not. You can go to the infinity mark, which is where you think it should be, but sometimes you back it off just a tiny little bit, you have a sharper edge than you do all the way to the.
You're absolutely right. So gaffer tape is exactly what I use too. If I have a lens that knows I have an older Nikkor lens, that's a 180, and it's just so heavy that immediately it starts going. So I'll gaffer tape that to keep the focus there. And the infinity is also nice too. So on your lens, there should be focal distances on here, and there's infinity on one of them. I usually do go to infinity first to get close to it. On this one, I have to back way off to actually get the focus correctly. But it gives me a good starting point.
I have one that works right on infinity, and I have another one, I can't remember if it's broken or not really.
This one's pretty far off. I think it's because it's been modified a little bit, so the focal plane distance isn't what it typically is. But
Yeah, and if you back it off a little bit, you'll see the video is much sharper than you see it.
you're completely right.
So I can get you to see what it is, but then you should probably figure out where it is on your.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else?
You shot last night and forgot to, or didn't do what, right?
Yeah.
You go ahead and do that?
So this camera is extremely noisy. I always try to shoot when I take the images themselves because it's not cool either. So I want to get as close to that temperature as possible. At nighttime, I was shooting in like 50-degree weather. If I shoot them today, it's going to be 90 degrees outside. So with a big temperature difference there, I try to do two things. Just not use darks at all and see how it goes if you don't have them, or wait until it cools down to around that temperature and try to shoot them then. That way it better fits your actual integration frames. You don't want to introduce a lot more noise that wasn't there, or vice versa with your bad dark frames. All right, thank you very much.
All right, folks, thank you, great job. Let's take, let's take a 5-minute break real quick, and then I'm going to invite Brent Maynard back up to cover a little bit of information about Blackwood Falls and the Dark Sky Initiative. And then we'll have a shortened question and answer period, and then proceed with that. So take 5 minutes. Let's be back here at 15 after 11, please. Thank you.
Yeah. 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 Yep. Jeremy's pretty good. He's pretty knowledgeable about shit. He actually runs Inside Astronomy. He has a telescope shop, Inside Astronomy, in Bridgeport, West Virginia. He sells telescopes and stuff. Yeah, he's got like rocks and everything. So, yeah, he can give you like good deals. Yeah, hook up with him. Hook up with him. He'll let you know when he's got like stuff in. It's like special. Because like if you get the big scope, they sell pretty quick, so he'll like give you a heads up when he's